everyone, welcome back to Grounded Haven. Today I have a seed haul to share with you. I bought a bunch of new varieties to try out for this upcoming gardening season. And as I go through all of these, I'm going to talk about what I got and also my plans for growing them if I have any. And I've got a nice big selection of seeds to share today. And I purchased from 3 different companies: Johnny Seeds, Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, and Seed Savers Exchange. So first let's go through the seeds that I got from Johnny Seeds because I only got a few packets from them. And I like to go to Johnny Seeds whenever I want specifically hybrid varieties because they have a ton of different hybrid seeds, and I'll usually go for hybrid seeds if I've already tried to grow some heirloom varieties of certain things and maybe it hasn't done well for us, or I know that it doesn't really do well in our area. Then I'll turn to hybrid seeds because these might have certain benefits or properties that heirloom seeds don't have because they are specifically bred into those varieties. So the first 3 varieties are all in the Brassica family because I feel like that's one thing we do struggle with if I try to grow the heirloom variety. Where we live, which is in Virginia, we don't really tend to have a very long spring or fall, which provides cooler and milder weather to grow things like cabbages and broccoli. Usually our summer comes very early and it heats up very quickly, which a lot of these types of plants don't like, and our fall weather can sometimes be a little short as well because summer will go pretty much like all through September and we only have like maybe a month or so before our first frost will come of actual fall weather. So I thought I would try out a few hybrid varieties of some things that I've struggled with. So the first thing I picked out was a Chinese cabbage called Rubicon. And Chinese cabbage, or Napa cabbage, I find is the most difficult of all cabbage to grow. It has a lot more like tender leafiness than other cabbages, so it's not quite as cold hardy, so it can't really go as far into the winter as other cabbages. And I've also found that when I've grown them in the past, I've had very mixed success with whether or not they'll head up. I think I had one year in the spring where I had some really nice Napa cabbage, but every other time I've tried to grow it, I usually just get like a few smaller leaves and they don't really form a head. So I wanted to try out this hybrid variety and see if it can form a nice head. And I believe the variety I chose forms like smaller heads instead of a really large head of Napa cabbage, and I thought that might be a little bit better because then I can space them in a little tighter and maybe they will grow faster as well since you're not waiting for like a huge head to form. Next I have a red cabbage that's called Ruby Perfection. And I have not been able to grow heirloom red cabbage before. I've grown green cabbage pretty nicely, but the heirloom variety I've tried before, which is Red Acre, it never really forms a head for me, or if it does, it's like the size of a baseball, so not very impressive and not really worth the effort. So I'm giving up on that variety and I'm gonna try this one instead. Next I have some Brussels sprouts. And again, this is another thing that I just have not had a lot of success with, so I wanted to try this out. I actually still have Brussels sprouts out in the garden right now, and I think they're starting to form the sprouts, but I've never actually successfully grown the sprouts before. Usually my plants will like kind of grow and then nothing will really happen. So that's another one I wanted to try and see if the hybrid variety would do a little bit better for us. So those are the brassicas that I got, and then I also picked up some onion seeds while I was on their website. I find that there are a lot of varieties of long day onions available on other websites, and I don't usually see a lot of like short or intermediate day onions. And if you don't know what that means, basically if you are growing onions from seed, you need to know your latitude, because in order for onions to bulb up, they need a certain number of daylight hours, and your latitude determines how long your days are when the onions are coming to maturity. So for us, I think we're at like a 38-degree latitude, which makes us like an intermediate day onion. And I really like how at Johnny's they categorize their onion seeds based on long, short, or intermediate day onions, so it makes it really easy for me to shop for those because I don't want to get the wrong variety that is not going to produce onions in our location. And also the onion seeds that I've bought from Johnny's before turned out to be the onions that grew the biggest of all the onion varieties I've grown, and I think at this point I've tried like 5 to 7 different onion varieties, and the seeds that I had gotten from there before that were really big, I don't think they sell them anymore. They were called Cortland and I couldn't find them on the website. So I decided to get 2 different varieties. The first one is called Sierra Blanca, And this is a white onion. I've never grown white onions before because I know that they don't store very well. They're kind of more of like a fresh eating onion, and that has deterred me from growing them in the past because I do tend to like to grow things that store really well, especially for things that you don't really have to preserve. Because for onions, you usually just have to cure them and then throw them in your basement and they will pretty much preserve themselves. So I thought that there wasn't really a good use for us to grow white onions because typically those will only last like up to a month. You really just want to eat them fresh. But this year I thought it would be a great idea to grow them. In my mind, I have always wanted storage onions because I want to be able to use them throughout the winter, but I usually end up going through a lot of the onions that we grow just for preservation season. I'll go through a lot of onions when we make pickles, salsa, and tomato sauce, all kinds of things like that, and I end up going through like half of my store of onions. So if I'm going to go through that many onions in the summer to preserve other things, then I might as well grow a variety that you're supposed to eat fresh, because then it doesn't dig into like my inventory of storage onions. So I figured it would be nice to actually have some fresh white onions. They do have like a sweeter, milder flavor, so that will be really nice to enjoy. And I think that's going to be great this year, especially for when I'm doing a lot of canning and things like that. And the second variety of onions I got, since I couldn't find the Cortland onions that I liked, which were a yellow variety, I got this Calibra variety. And that's just like a pretty standard yellow onion that should last longer in storage. For onions, I try not to buy too many different kinds of seeds each year because their germination rate really goes down from year to year. So I have some leftovers from last year that I'm going to try and use up this year, but then I also bought a few new varieties just to kind of like replenish my stock and to try some new stuff. But I will typically try to use whatever onion seeds I buy within like 2 years. So those are the 5 different seed varieties I got from Johnny's. Next, let me move on to Seed Savers Exchange, and this is going to be the bulk of this seed haul. I bought a lot of different things from Seed Savers, and the main reason that I wanted to shop at Seed Savers was because they had a really nice selection of dried beans that I wanted to choose from, and I think heirloom beans are just so beautiful. Some of them have such cool patterns, and I'm not really sure why, but something about the idea of like these beautiful heirloom beans really appeals to me. And we also eat a lot of beans as well, so they're very practical. So I was on their website and looking at all of their different beans that honestly just look really pretty. I just thought it would be really fun to grow. And the variety I ended up choosing is called the Hidatsa Shield. And if you see the picture, they're so pretty. They're mostly white, but then they have a little bit of like a speckly brown area on just a little bit of the bean. And I'll take them out of the packet so you could see them in person. So here's what they look like. I think they're so pretty and unique. And I really like how dry beans are very easy to grow as well, because you just grow them up a trellis and you pretty much just leave them until it's like late summer or fall and you pick all of the dry pods. You don't have to harvest them as they come to maturity because you're waiting for those beans to dry out on the vine. So in that way, they're super low maintenance. Again, they're a type of vegetable that pretty much just preserves itself because you just wait for them to dry and you store it that way. Last year we grew a dry bean variety called Good Mother Stallard, and I also really loved those. They were very beautiful. We have yet to eat them, but I think we're going to try them out this week. But I'll probably grow those again because they were very pretty and very productive. So I'm just gonna add these dried beans to the mix as well. And my plan for when we grow them, since these beans you can eat both as a snap bean and as a dry bean, if I remember to get to it, my plan is to pick the first crop of beans as snap beans and then let the rest of the beans produce as dry beans. I think if I do that, picking those first beans will stimulate more growth and maybe we'll get better production out of it. So that's my plan for those. I also picked up these Scarlet Runner beans, which you again can use as a dry bean or a snap bean. But my main reason for buying this is because the flowers are supposed to be very beautiful and they're supposed to cover a trellis really nicely. So if you were around during last year's garden season, you'll know that Aaron built us this arbor for the entrance of our garden, and last year we didn't grow anything around it because we didn't have any pots at the base. But I think this year he's going to build some small raised beds to go on the sides of the arbor, and then I can grow these Scarlet Runner beans and they will hopefully cover that arbor and they'll have these really beautiful red flowers and the hummingbirds will really love them. them, so I think that will be a really nice kind of like entrance to our vegetable garden. And lastly, I have another bean, but this one is a soybean. This one is called Fiskebee, and we grew soybeans for the first time last year, and I absolutely loved them. They were not only delicious, but very productive and low maintenance, and they don't take up a lot of space, and they don't need trellising either. They kind of grow like a bush bean. And the edamame that we grew last year, I loved it so much that it made like my list of top 5 vegetables that we grew last year. So I talked about those in that video, so you can watch that if you're interested. And I'm definitely going to grow the variety that we grew last year again, but I also wanted to try another variety and I needed more seeds. So we're gonna be trying this variety. The ones that we grew last year are a black soybean when they're dry, and this one is a green one. But yeah, since they were a favorite of ours last year, I definitely had to get more seeds for those. Next I have a leek called Giant Musselburgh. And I liked this variety because they looked very large. And the only other variety of leek that I've tried before is King Richard, and those grow like really nice long leeks, but the ones I've grown don't get very thick, so I wanted to try these out and see if I can get them to be a little bit bigger. Next we have some golden beets, and this is just a restock. We've grown these before, and last year we grew some really nice golden beets that we really enjoyed. I like golden beets more than red beets because they are more mild flavored. They don't have as much of that like earthy kind of like dirt flavor that red beets have that I don't always love. Golden beets are a lot sweeter and more mellow, so I really like them. Next we have a kohlrabi. This is like a white variety, although I feel like I would call this a green kohlrabi. And in the past we've only grown a purple kohlrabi, and we've had very mixed results with it. Sometimes they'll form really nice bulbs, but I think it's only like 30 to 50% of the time. I feel like for some reason purple varieties of vegetables tend to be a little bit trickier, so I wanted to try like a more standard white / green variety because I think those will more predictably form nice bulbs. Next I have a tomatillo variety called Dr. Weitsch's Yellow. The only other tomatillo we've grown in the past is a green tomatillo, and these yellow ones, which also kind of have like a blush of purple where the sun hits them, I think they're supposed to be sweeter than the green ones because green tomatillos are a little bit like tart and tangy. They're really good for salsa verde and other kinds of sauces or salsas, but I do tend to like to eat tomatillos raw sometimes, kind of like the way you would eat a tomato. I like to just like slice them in half and eat them that way. So since these yellow ones are supposed to get a little sweeter, I thought that they would be really nice for fresh eating. And I haven't decided yet if I'm just going to try this new one and not do the green tomatillos this year. It might be too much to do both because tomatillos are super productive, and for us I think 2 plants is enough. So yeah, I might just do this new variety and we'll see how it does. For tomatillos, one thing to note is you do need to have at least 2 plants. I think for pollination reasons, you can't just grow 1 tomatillo plant, so that's something to keep in mind. But I think if I grow 2 of this new variety and it does well, we should be set. Next I have a beautiful eggplant variety that has kind of a lighter purple color with some stripes of white as well. I usually only grow like a longer Asian eggplant. Last year the ones that I grew were like a really dark purple and they are super productive. I tend to like those kinds of eggplants because they are milder, they're not as bitter, and they have fewer seeds, and I like to use them more for stir fries because the more Italian round eggplants, they can be a little bit like a spongier texture. They have more seeds and also they don't produce as well. But last year our eggplants actually did really well. I was able to protect them from our flea beetles for the most part by covering those plants while they were young with some frost fabric or netting. So my plan is to do that again for this upcoming year, and if that helps with the flea beetles again, I think our plants will do really well. So since we had good success with eggplants last year, I figured I could add on a new variety to the mix. And even though I do tend to like the Asian eggplants more for stir frying, sometimes I do like to have like those bigger, rounder eggplants. They're really good for roasting and making eggplant dip or baba ganoush out of, because the Asian eggplants just don't have as much meat to do something like that out of. But of course I couldn't just go for a plain variety. I had to go for one that is just really beautiful. So I hope that does well, and I hope it does as well as Asian eggplant usually does for us. Next, I have two varieties of winter squash. The first one is a very standard, just the Waltham butternut squash, and we have had really good success with this variety, and I just didn't have any more seeds left. Pretty standard butternut squash, just like what you would get at the grocery store, and I really love growing butternut squash because they store so well. They're probably one of like the best storage squash. And then I also got a Pennsylvania Dutch crookneck, which looks very similar to the butternut, and I think it will taste very similar as well. But these ones have kind of like a rounded, longer neck. And I thought it would be really nice because the neck area of the squash is the part that doesn't have any seeds, and you usually get the smoothest meat in there. So if I could grow something that tastes like a butternut but has a greater proportion of the really nice part that you like to eat, that would be great. And this one is also supposed to store really well. So those are all my Seed Savers Exchange seeds. And the last batch of seeds I got from Baker Creek, and I only have a few varieties. These are just some things that I couldn't get at the Seed Savers website, so I got them from Baker Creek. And the great thing about Baker Creek is that they always have free shipping and they give you free seeds. So I'm never sad when I have to just like go place a small order from them. And mostly what I got from there is a few varieties of peppers. So the first one is a poblano pepper, which is a mild pepper. You can use it in Mexican cooking, but I also just really like to stir fry it. It has more of a spice than like a sweet bell pepper, but it's less than a jalapeno, so it's a really nice in-between that we really enjoy. Next, I have a Hungarian hot wax pepper, and I got these because I realized this year that I don't really like sweet banana peppers. They just like don't really have a lot of flavor, but I do really like that they produce really early on. So I decided to get this hot variety of what is basically a banana pepper because hopefully it will still produce very early. Usually banana peppers are like the first peppers that we have that are available to pick, but since these ones have a spice, they will have more flavor. I find banana peppers to be too mild and they kind of disappear when I'm cooking them. Next, I have a Lesia pepper, and this one is a smaller pepper, but they're supposed to have really thick flesh. And this is a sweet pepper, and I thought these would be really great because smaller peppers tend to not have very thick flesh. But again, I do like how smaller peppers usually are ready to mature a lot faster than a larger bell pepper, and it's really nice to have those peppers mature earlier on because they do tend to take a lot of the season just to get your first pepper. I think this is also a variety that someone left a comment and said that they really liked these ones, so that was reason enough for me to buy it. And then I have some chamomile seeds. This is the Zloty Lan, and this variety is supposed to have bigger flowers than, I think it's like Roman or German chamomile. I can't remember which one is like the more standard one, but this one is supposed to have bigger flowers so that you don't have to pick as many, because chamomile flowers, if you've ever picked them before, they're very small and they only get smaller as they dry, which is what you would usually have to do to save them for tea. So if I can pick fewer flowers and get the same amount of tea, then that would be great. I really love chamomile tea for at night. That's probably the herbal tea I drink most of, so it would be nice to grow some of that this year. In the past, we have not really grown a lot of chamomile, so hopefully this year will be the year for us. And lastly, since Baker Creek gives you some free seeds with your orders, we have one free seed packet, and this is a spoon tomato. These are so cute. They're very tiny, so I'm not sure if I'm actually going to grow these because I just don't know if I want to pick such tiny little tomatoes. They'll take a lifetime to pick off of the plant, but they're really fun, so we'll see. I think if you like to grow flowers and you like to put like really fun things into your flower arrangements, this would be a really great tomato for that because you can kind of just like pick a branch off your tomato plant with all of those tiny little tomatoes. I think that that would look really pretty. But other than a decorative purpose, I'm not really sure how much of a use they have since the tomatoes are so tiny. Sorry if you can hear my cat wailing right now. I have my door closed to record this and she really wants to get into the room right now. But luckily that brings us to the end of this seed haul. There were a lot of new varieties that I talked about and I'm really excited to try them out this year. And I actually think it's almost time to start the first seeds of the year very soon. So this weekend I'm probably going to be starting some onion seeds and shallots, leeks, that kind of thing. So that will be coming up very soon. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you again in the next one. Junie, are you trying to get in?